Please explain the attitude of prayer. I tried to explain to ourselves here that it is possible to do more than one thing at the same time. We shouldn't think, how can I be in an attitude of prayer and attend to my work? I have very heavy responsibilities. How can I do both things? It is possible to do both things. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said it. He didn't say all the time. There is a time that we cannot be in an attitude of prayer. When I have my shower, I can't exactly be in an attitude of prayer. When I have to do other things to do, he doesn't say all the time. He leaves it flexible. But it says it should be more than 50%. It should most of the time. He leaves it to you to decide whether you want to be 50.1% or you want to be 90%. He leaves that the decision to you. But it should be most of the time. So now, you know, science has proven that telepathy exists. Telepathy is communication between two individuals without the use of words, without the use of signs, without by sending a communication on your computer, an email through your computer, or a telephone call. So without these physical means of communication, science has proven that it is possible for two individuals, for example, to have telepathy, communication. I have experienced it quite often. I'm sure you have experienced it. For example, my wife and I had very close relationship. As I told you, my married life extends over 65 years. How many times this has happened? A thought comes to me, and immediately, before I say it, Violette is saying it. The same thought. This is telepathy. This exists. So our minds have powers, mental powers. We have many psychologists maybe amongst us in this group. Psychology has proven that this is possible. When Shoghi Effendi was asked about telepathy, he said this is a matter for psychology to investigate and to explain. It's a psychological thing. It exists. No physical communication of any kind. Mental communication. If you like, call it spiritual communication. Not physical. So when we think about that, we realize that one can be in communication with our beloved, our most beloved, our well-beloved, Baha'u'llah. We can be in communication with Abdul Baha, through Abdul Baha with Baha'u'llah. So this thing exists. So why isn't it possible for me as a Baha'i to have communication with my beloved? And he says in his writings over and over again, I am near you, you are far, I am near you. There are prayers on this point that we draw ourselves away from God. He is right there. We shut ourselves out, but He's right there. We can be in communication with Him. He loves us. He wants to help us. His strength is there. His wisdom is there. His power is there. And I have to be able to draw on this myself and not be far myself, draw myself away from Him, get closer to Him. And that's what I think is the prayerful attitude, to realize that He sees me, yeah. He exists and He loves me, yeah. He's near me. He wants to be closer even to me. He wants me to turn to Him, to have communication with Him. To be in an attitude of prayer is this desire this effort to be closer to Him, to be aware that I am in His presence. I'm not shut out. No, I am in His presence. He sees me. We have to get into this mental, this spiritual condition. And it is not impossible. It is necessary. How can we achieve greater focus and concentration while praying? Yeah, that's a problem. And it will continue to be a problem to our last breath. Yeah. It is very difficult to do that. We have to try and try again. We will fail, we'll try again. Every time we will do a little bit better. And that's all right. Carry on. This mind moves, travels, thinks, wonders, imagines. Rein it in to the extent that you can. You will succeed, but I can assure you, I don't think that any one of us will succeed 100%. Never. Because we are human. But as I have said before, if we're satisfied with 50%, 0.1 of achievement, it's a dangerous area because you'll soon get into the 40s, 49.9, then 49.8, and so on and so forth. Lift yourself up. It is like children, students passing to the higher class. To pass with 50.1 is mediocre. It's a minimum. It's dangerous. But it passes on because it's over the 50%. What God wants, what the teacher wants, what the parents want, 60%, 70%. Why not 80%? Why not 90%? 100% we will never achieve. I have said that before. In this case, it's the same thing. We will never achieve it 100%, but we will try. We will never give up. We will try. We'll continue. Never be disappointed. So that's what I think on the subject. Abdul Baha has written that teachers should become incarnate light. How do we become incarnate light? It's the same answer. In the absolute, it is impossible. If in absolute terms, impossible. Of course, in the writings, they give us such high goals, such high aims. But if you cannot reach that very, very highest spot of 100%, it's the same thing that I've just said. Don't be discouraged, because you will never reach that point, 100%, in absolute terms. But in relative terms, it's again the same story. It's the mediocre minimum and the highest possible attainment, as close as possible to perfection. How do I develop the virtue of patience? I wish I knew. Patience. Love. When there is love, there is patience. We have all had mothers. Mothers are very patient with their children. Why? Because they love the child. Fathers also love their children, but I'm afraid we as fathers are not very, very patient. But mothers are, because they have greater love, deeper love. Believe me, they do. I think this is why Abdul Baha says the mothers are the primary educators of children. The fathers are educators, but they are educators number 2. And there is an educator number 3, and that's the teacher. See the difference between number 2 and number 3. A huge difference. There is a difference between number 1 and number 2 as well. Because Abdul Baha says the primary educator is the mother. So their love is also even more than the love of the father. Although the father, God knows, loves very deeply, no question about that. He's ready to give his life just as much as the mother wants to give her life. But the mother has something just a little bit more than what the fathers are. Yeah, because they have a more tender heart. So I think the answer is love. The Guardian, in one of the letters written on his behalf in 1942, stated that the hardest and the noblest task in the world today is to be a true Baha'i. What do you think are the most important steps to take to carry out this task successfully? You know my answer. I just shared with you my answer. I believe in my bones that the first duty of every one of us sitting in this hall is teaching the cause. I believe in my bones that teaching the cause is the panacea, the cure-all for all problems in the community. If there is any differences among the friends, it is because we are not teaching. If we feel that, there are no people who are interested in the cause in our little town or in our city, it is because we are not teaching. If we have problems with our children, it's because we are not teaching. They don't see us teaching. They follow our example. They see, as parents, we are not doing anything. They follow the same example. We have problems in the families. We lose our youth because we are not doing our duty. And believe me, our children will be lost if we don't set the example ourselves. They should see that we are engaged in the teaching work. I think this is my one and only answer is that Baha'u'llah has given us a blessing, a gift, by placing on our shoulders the gift of teaching his cause. And he has abolished a professional clergy. And he has set up the administrative order. And even the administrative order and its institutions, the first thing he tells them, teach the cause. There is a tablet revealed by Baha'u'llah that the Baha'is call Lawh Baytul Adl, the tablet of the House of Justice. How do we balance service to the faith with all the demands of children and family life? My dear friend, do you think that Baha'u'llah is cruel? He's asking us to do something which is impossible? Do you think so? It's not true. He's asking us something which he knows is practical. So the problem is our understanding is wrong. There is absolute no conflict between family life, between professional life, between active Baha'i life. There is no conflict. We have to find the time. It is our duty to work out this balance between all these duties. Do you think teaching needs special time, special evenings? Yes, if you want to extend hospitality in your home and meet contact, that takes time. That I agree. But teaching generally, never let a day pass without mentioning the faith to anybody. Take this one. Do you think this takes time? of your professional work, of your family responsibilities? No, of course not. It is a consciousness, it is an awareness that I must have when I wake up in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, I should think with a prayer perhaps, oh God, this is a new day. Assist me, help me, guide me. Let me see people. Let me recognize their readiness. Let me mention the faith. In my mixing, in my association with people, in my office, when I even go to my grocery, to buy my grocery, any time that I am mixing with people, I should be aware. I have my duty. I have to mention the faith. I have to find a way of mentioning the faith. If, for example, one way of starting the conversation would be, oh, I read in the news this morning, or I saw on television such and such. Isn't that a pity that such a thing can happen in the world today? According to my religious beliefs, it should be thus and thus. Your religious beliefs? Yeah, I'm a Baha'i. This is a very simple conversation. You have mentioned the faith. What is Baha'i? You have the opportunity. The person may not be interested at all. Baha'i doesn't mean anything. He is not ready. Continue. You still have another, let us say, 10 hours of that day free. You can still have other opportunities. But this should be your inner prayer, inner request, inner supplication to God, to Baha'u'llah. Give me an opportunity. I am waiting. Please give me an opportunity. I will use wisdom. But we have to do it. And I'm sure that God will assist us, because without His help, it is impossible. In Ruhi Book 1, it uses a quote, "Whoso hath failed to recognize Him will have condemned himself to the misery of remoteness, a remoteness which is utter nothingness and the essence of the nethermost fire." As a tutor of seekers and new believers with non-Baha'i spouses, this can be a very sensitive topic of discussion. How do we tactfully explain this? You remember that tablets specially revealed by Baha'u'llah, the people who wrote to him, the people he was dealing with, were mostly Muslims. The faith had not yet spread all over the world. It has not yet touched the Western world. It had not yet gone into all parts of the Pacific. It had not reached the Pacific Islands. Nowhere. And not all the parts of Asia, I mean, nor of the Pacific. It was the Middle East, that was all. These people were Muslims. He had to use terminology that they understood. They understood that hell was fire. So he uses the word fire so that they can understand what he means. But as Baha'is, in his teachings, there is no such thing as fire in the next world. Fire is part of the mineral world. How can something belonging to the mineral world suddenly exist in the next world, in the realms on high? It's impossible. This is an example. In other words, what does fire do? It burns. It's painful. That's what he's saying. I mean, that's what Muhammad had in mind when he spoke about fire. That's what maybe the Old Testament exactly meant when they spoke about fire in the next world. So you have to remember that these may be nothing but analogies. They are not to be taken literally. So these things we have to bear in mind. So to me, what he means here when he speaks about to the misery of remoteness, remoteness is fire. Nearness is heaven. Abdul Baha, when some of the pilgrims especially from the United States, would sing the hymn, "Nearer, my God, to Thee." Oh, he loved it so much. When pilgrims would come to the United States, from the United States, with this hymn, he would ask them when we enter the shrine, "I want you to chant this hymn in the shrine. Nearer, my God, to Thee." That's the whole purpose of life, of a Baha'i life, is to get nearer to God. Remoteness from God is hell. Nearness to God is heaven. So we must understand these terminologies. If we are instructed to teach the faith 365 days, what happens on days when we are only around Baha'is, such as being here at Llewellyn? Yeah. It's a very good question, by the way. Yeah. I'll tell you a little story. Soon after the election of the House of Justice, I came to the United States on a visit with my children, with Violette, of course. When I was at Green Acre, the committee there asked me to give a pep talk on teaching the faith. So I gave a talk. Among the things that I said, two things. I said that Shoghi Effendi says that we should not miss a single day. We have to teach the faith every single day. What the quotation that I read to you. Second thing I said that those of us who are serving at the World Center have been deprived of the blessing of teaching the cause, because that was the policy of Baha'u'llah. It was the same thing during the ministry of Abdul Baha. It was the same thing during the ministry of Shoghi Effendi. And so far, it is still the same policy as before. I said this. Now, I finished my talk. I saw after the talk, as I was leaving the hall with my family, I saw a dear woman, thin, small, elderly. I'm not very tall myself, but she was up to here. She pulled herself. He said, "Mr. Nakhjavani, I want to ask you a question." Now we're leaving the hall. "I want to ask you a question." I said, "Yes, please." He said, "Why did you say that you are deprived from the blessing of teaching the cause of God in the Holy Land? Why did you say that?" I said, "Because this is the policy of the House of Justice, continues to be the same as I explained." He said, "No, this is not true." Now, see what she said. Believe me, she put me to shame. She said, "I have heard that the Universal House of Justice gives everyone who is serving at the World Center 4 weeks every year. And during those 4 weeks, they can go anywhere. They don't have to remain in Israel. They can go anywhere." Why do you say this? The House of Justice is giving you freedom. You have 28 days free. You are now in the United States. You are free. I never thought of this. I said, wow, she's right. She's absolutely right. I should have been thinking of teaching the cause during those few days that I am in the United States. Because this is a free country. I should have done this. And I wasn't aware of it. God knows, I thanked her so much. I said, "You are right and I am wrong." Then she said, "You know, Mr. Nakhjavani, I am here at Green Acre. It is as if I am in prison." I'm supposed to teach the cause every day, and I'm here with all Baha'is. What's the use of it? I have decided, as soon as I leave Greenacre, from now on, for the period of 1 week while I have been away, I should teach the course twice instead of once. I was asked by someone, why should I join the Baha'i faith rather than just being a good person and doing good deeds? She subsequently joined the Unitarians. What is a compelling answer? It depends on the person. One answer might be good for one person, the same answer might not be good for another person. You have to use your wisdom. If this person has joined the Unitarians, I think it's very good. At least the Unitarians have a more or less open attitude towards others. At least it's good. At least this person does not say, I have decided to become an atheist. So I think when you're speaking to this person, you should say, of course, you're free. You want to do this. I'm so glad you go to the Unitarians. I've heard some wonderful things about the Unitarians. Be positive about it. But the point to make, I think, very briefly I'm making the point, that the reason why a Baha'i is a Baha'i is not because only of good deeds. It is because I am recognizing the light that has come to the world, the source of energy and force that has been infused in humanity. A manifestation of God has come. There is a God. I have an immortal soul. God sends messengers. Baha'u'llah has come at this time for the unity of the planet. There is a process of evolution in humanity. It has reached a point when it has to have universal peace. And God has sent now a manifestation of God for the establishment of the universal peace and a plan how this should be done. Jesus also spoke about world loving everybody, but he did not produce any plan for how this universal peace should be established. Now this is today, mankind is approaching maturity, so we have this new manifestation. So recognizing him is like going out into light, into the sun, and receiving the rays of the sun. Now, of course, I can be in my room and say, I'll do only good deeds and so on for others, but I don't want that light to come in. Maybe I even close the window. That's not right. So that's why it's important to recognize the source of this light and commit and perform good deeds. And Baha'u'llah says, if it is good deeds alone, it's not the same as having the recognition plus the deeds. These two should be together. Now, you can think of other things. You pray about it, God will inspire you. True loss, Baha'u'llah says, true loss is for him who has spent his days without knowing himself. It is true, we have to know ourselves. But in the writings, it is very clearly explained. You know this adage that we have in Greek philosophy, know thyself. And people think that it is possible to really know oneself. This matter has been discussed in the writings of Abdul Baha very clearly. He says, it is impossible for any man to understand the true essence of himself. He makes a distinction between essence and attributes. It's impossible. The essence is the soul. The soul is a ray from God. How can you know that ray? To really know you. So know thyself, if it's taken in the sense of to know the reality, the essence within me, which is my soul, I will never know that. Impossible. I cannot know myself the same way I cannot know God. It's impossible. The essence I cannot know. But what I can know is what the questioner is asking, my capacities, my weaknesses. I should examine myself. Baha'u'llah says, bring yourself to account each day before thou art brought to a reckoning. حاسب نفسك في كل يوم قبل أن تحاسب. Bring yourself to account. By bringing myself to account, I begin to understand myself. To understand, why did I lie? Why did I not tell the truth? Why do I feel jealous about so-and-so and the other sir? Why do I think meanly that I am better than this other person and the other? I have to bring to account each day. He doesn't say once a week. He says every day. I have to do that. That's the way that I come to know myself. I see my trespasses. I see my weaknesses. Shugh Effendi says in one of his letters, we all have weak points. Things that go into my heart, I always say, these words should be written in gold. I think these words should be written in gold. There is no exception. You cannot say you have no weak points. I'm sorry, I disagree with you. You do have weak points. I'm not going to have an argument with you. But whoever you are, you have weak points. Those weak points you have to discover, rectify, adjust yourself, correct yourself. We do the opposite. When we look at others, we look at their weak points instead of at ourselves to see our weak points. What do we see in ourselves? Most of the time, the strong points. When we look at others, we look at their weak points. The exact opposite. So, my dear friends, we have to know ourselves in the sense of knowing our weaknesses, because we have them. We're not exempt. We're not saints. We can never be saints. Maybe we can acquire certain saintly qualities, but not a saint. If we become a saint, that's Abdul Baha only. In one of the tablets of Abdul Baha, every Baha'i must mention the greatest name once a day at least. Which one is it? Should it be Ya Baha'u'llah or something else? In which position we should say it? I think what is meant here is Allahu Akbar. It's also in the Kitab Aqdas. Of course, we can use the word Ya Baha'u'llah as well. What I think Abdul Baha must have meant was to turn to Baha'u'llah and call upon him to help us. You can say Allahu Akbar, can say Ya Baha'u'llah. There is no special position. The main thing is your heart, how you turn your heart to Baha'u'llah, with humility, with sincerity, with deep love. That is important. The position, how you do it, is left. Now, when it comes to saying 95 times Allahu Akbar, Baha'u'llah has specific instructions. Have ablutions, sit down, repeat 95 times Allahu Akbar. When we say our Allahu Akbar for 95 times each day, what should be the thinking about? My dear, if we have to be in a prayerful attitude, naturally we should consider this as a prayer. Allahu Akbar, it's a form of prayer. It's a prayer of praise and thanksgiving. Allahu Akbar. What does Allahu Akbar mean? God is most glorious. God is all glorious. We are praising God. Baha is glorious. So we are praising the glory of God. It's a form of turning our hearts to Baha'u'llah. This is my understanding. What advice might you give to Baha'i youth attempting to choose their occupation? and professional path in today's world, how can they maintain a spiritual perspective in their life choices in today's unstable and insecure material world? I think that in the choice of any occupation, in the choice of any professional path, it is very important, I think, for the children, the junior youth, the adolescents who are going now to university or on their way to university, with the help of their parents, to determine what is their personal inclination. That's very important. Each one of us is different from the person sitting next to us. We are very special. Each one of us is different. And you can imagine the unlimited number of creatures that God has. Everyone is different. What a power. What a power He has, really, to do this sort of thing. But it is true. And this is not my opinion. It is in the writings of Abdul Baha. He clearly says that. Therefore, identifying the inclination is very important. Of course, the primary person is the child, it's the student himself, our children themselves. But we must help them, we must observe them to see where is the inclination. I had two friends, they were twins in the university. One of them was studying civil engineering. The brother twin, the other twin, was studying medicine. You know what they both told me? They said, I'm doing civil engineering because my father ordered me that I should become a civil engineer. The twin brother said, I too am studying medicine because my father ordered me to. But what were they? Because I was close to both of them. What were their inclinations? The one who was an engineer, studying engineering, was a musician. He had his guitar, he was composing music. That's what he was doing. The one who was wanting to become a doctor was a poet. Believe me, he knew more about Shakespeare's style and Shakespeare's plays and so on than students who were studying English literature. Because that was his love. But he was forced by a father who was stupid, definitely. You study medicine, you study civil. This doesn't work. So the individual child should decide with the help of his parents, providing that the parents act wisely, intelligently. You see, but I think that's very important. And when a decision is taken, to see how this decision will be of help to the world of humanity. I think I have said this before, that once Abdul Baha was asked, what is Baha'i? What is the definition of Baha'i? He said, a Baha'i is a lover of humanity. What a definition that is. Shoghi Effendi says the pivot of the revelation of Baha'u'llah revolves around one principle, the oneness of mankind. In other words, the whole purpose of the faith of God is to establish the oneness of mankind. There is even a letter from the pen of written on behalf of Shoghi Effendi, in which he says, the faith of God itself is an instrument. The faith of God is a means to an end, not an end in itself. We serve the cause because it is through the cause that the welfare of humanity will be made secure. Even the cause of God has one goal: to achieve universal peace, universal happiness, universal prosperity, universal progress for the welfare of humanity. So whenever we decide what should our children study, discuss this principle of being a means for the promotion of the welfare of humanity through the profession that the child decides to study and pursue, as I said, with the help of the wisdom of their parents. What is the appropriate reaction when inadvertently one comes across the portrait of Baha'u'llah on the internet? I must explain this question about the internet and the portrait of Baha'u'llah. You know, when Baha'u'llah was in Adrianople, in Edirne, as you know, this portrait that we have in the archives was taken at that time when Baha'u'llah was in Adrianople. The same time when Abdul Baha is sitting as a young man that was taken at the same time. Same time when the purest branches is the picture of taken. The same time when the greatest holy leaves portrait at that time was taken. All this was in Adrianople. Now, the photographer at that time, now we have texts on that, it's not just out of a historian of the Baha'i faith, no, it's a text of Abdul Baha's tablet. When Baha'u'llah was in Adrianople, the photographer took one shot, and then he wasn't sure whether it was a good shot. He wanted to make 100% sure. He asked for permission to have another shot. He took 2 shots. All right, Baha'u'llah did not mind. He produced the photographs to Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah did not approve one and approve the other. The one that's in the archives is the one that he has approved. Then, because it had been there, prints had been made. Maybe the family asked, this I don't know. But prints were made of both photographs, both shots. And because the family who were firm in the covenant knew that Baha'u'llah did not like the second one, they never gave a copy of that to the friend. Because in those days, in the early days, Baha'is who would come on pilgrimage, who had served the cause, would be given a copy of the portrait of Baha'u'llah. So we had portraits of Baha'u'llah of the first shot given to pilgrims in the Holy Land by the members of the Holy Family, more particularly by the greatest holy leaf. And there are still some original portraits of Baha'u'llah in Iran, in the homes of very few believers. I have seen actually the portrait in 2 homes in Iran. Very respectable, very devoted Baha'is who had this. And they don't show it to everybody because it was not the instruction of Abdul Baha or Shoghi Effendi, but they had it. All right, now, what about the other shot? The other shot was in the hands of the covenant-breaking section of the family. Mr. Miller, who, as you know, has attacked the faith and written books against the faith. What is the Baha'i faith, or The Baha'i Faith is the title of one of his books. He was in contact with the covenant breakers. The covenant breakers had the other portrait and they gave it to him. He published it in his book on very fine, good paper because he wanted others to make copies of it. And the others did make copies of it. And those who do not like our faith, those who are opposing our faith, immediately got hold of it And they put it even on the internet. So what you see there is the copy, is that portrait that Baha'u'llah did not approve. Please remember this. And you can tell my story to anybody you like. Because this is based on a tablet revealed by Abdul Baha. Not the section about Miller and everything else. That is mine. But the first part about the 2 shots and all that. So I just giving you the historical background about these photographs. So what should be the appropriate reaction? That depends on you, as you like. You can look at it. You cannot want to look at it. That is your decision. God bless you. What can you tell us about the importance of agriculture and the future of its importance? I'll tell you a little story about my own life. How about that? I had a mother who was very devoted, and because she had a special relationship with the greatest holy leaf, she went quite often to the Master's house. And I had just finished my secondary school, and I was planning to go to university. I'm not criticizing her, God forbid, but out of love, without telling me, she went one day to Shoghi Effendi and said that Ali is finished, he wants to go to university. What is the wish of Shoghi Effendi for him? What should he study? Shoghi Effendi answered, he said that this depends on his own choice, his own inclination. So that was no answer for her. She kept quiet, and then Shoghi Effendi continued. He said, Baha'u'llah has praised medicine, and he referred to it as the most noble of all sciences. If he is interested, it would be very nice in medicine. Another pause. He also praised agriculture. And if he is interested in agriculture, it will be in the spirit of the writings of Baha'u'llah. Pause. However, you tell him on my behalf, that the important thing for him now is to perfect his English. That was all. That was the advice that he gave. She wrote to me immediately that this is what it is. I said, of course, first thank you very much, So I said I must try the same order. I had many friends in the medicine department of the university. I went to them and I said, I want to be with you, if you don't mind, as you go to these places, and tell me more about your work and the studies. And he took me to so many of the places, including morgues and things like that. I said, to me, that was not my interest. So I came to my conclusion, that's not it, definitely. Because he said, inclination, that's not my inclination. So I went to friends of mine in the agricultural department. And again, for a day or two, I had 1 or 2 friends there. They showed me their books, they showed me the places where they are working and this and that. No, I wasn't interested. I didn't know what to do. I really did not have much interest in anything. I never saw my father. It was my mother who brought us up, my brother and I, who was 2 years older. And so she had really injected or infused in our hearts, in our souls, the love of the cause. Baha'u'llah says mothers are primary educators. she had done that. So when I really thought about it, I said, really, I love this cause so much. I love Baha'u'llah. I must do something that would be useful for the cause of Baha'u'llah. Since Shoghi Effendi said that, tell him that his English should be good, why don't I go for English literature? And that's what I did. This story is finished, but the reason why I shared it with you was that section about agriculture. That Shoghi Effendi, immediately after medicine, he mentioned agriculture. It is a very important subject. It is so important even today, maybe today more than any other time, for the economy, the worldwide economy. If agriculture is pursued properly, seriously, and not considered as, oh, that's for farmers, not for me, I'm this, I'm that. This is a very vital thing. But Abdul Baha says, for world economy, you should start with the village. Now, the village is farming. So, economy in every country, well, some countries don't even have land, adequate land for agriculture. But for most countries, there is enough land for agriculture in order to develop that. So I think that agriculture is a noble thing. It's a noble field of study.